What is up, guys? X Factor here, and we are continuing our playthrough here of Angry Birds and going to continue our story here. And I should have had this video up like 2 days ago, but unfortunately I've just had shit happen, you know? I'm kind of living like that book series of unfortunate events, because that's pretty much what's been happening to me for the past 2 days, just series of unfortunate events, and I just haven't had the time to, you know, play this or do anything really, which kind of sucks, but, you know, I have time now, so we can finally finish this story and whatnot. And where did we leave off? I think I was in Rochester, and I had called Amanda, and I went to bed. And you know, the next morning, no phone call, no text messages. But we headed off to Long Island anyways, which I think was about like 5 or 6 hours from where we were. So funny thing, we were close to Long Island. I think we were like, I don't know, like an hour away, and we were kind of in some traffic, and all of a sudden a song plays on my iPod called Do You Call My Name by Raw. That they spell their name just R-A, in case you look for the song. And we have our windows down, and it's kind of blared up, and as the song starts to play, I notice that this all-natural frozen food truck pulls up beside us, and there's like this hodgepodge guy in there with his turbine, and I just could not help to start laughing because it was pretty hilarious. If you listen to the song, just the beginning of the song, and you think about it, I think you'll find it funny too. I thought it was pretty funny. And so at the time, you know, as we're getting there, Amanda number 2 is texting me, and she wants us to come over. And you know, I knew about like 4 Amandas back then, so for some reason I just like numbered them. So of course the one I liked was like number 1, and number 2 used to be friends with an Amanda, and their egos like collided or something, and then they just weren't friends anymore. And so she gives me her address, and we arrive at her house. And I remember getting there, and I was like, damn, because, you know, she lived in a nice neighborhood in a nice big house. And you know, I had talked to her for about like a year or two, and you know, you don't really ask, you know, are you and your parents, you guys like well off, you know? Anyways, we walk in there, and she already has another guy friend over, and they're like watching a movie. So we go up to her room, and we talk, and it's kind of like awkward for a little bit. I really don't know why it was awkward, but there was just like nothing to talk about. I remember she told me that I looked a lot different than she thought I would, because she thought I'd be like, you know, have like, I'd be wearing like overalls and would have like long hair or some shit. And I was like, I'm not some fucking hillbilly, you know? But yeah, once we got past the awkwardness there for a while, just because there was like some awkward silence. But once we got past that, it wasn't so bad. And I remember I signed her desk, because she had like, her friends would like sign her desk. So I was able to sign her desk, and I put my signature, "Have you seen Billy," on there. And, you know, come to think about it, she better still have that fucking desk, because that, you know, that signature is pretty fucking awesome. And I remember after that, she asked me why I wasn't with my girlfriend. And I'm like, she's not my girlfriend, and I don't know where she lives, okay? And she's like, well, doesn't that suck? And I was like, well, do you know where her apartment is? And she's like, well, she usually would drive here, but I've been there once or twice. I'm like, well, can you give us like some half-assed directions, you know, point us somewhere in the way of where it is? So, you know, she gave us some directions, like go back to the 7-Eleven and take a left and stay to the right. And then when you come to a fork in the road, you know, turn right and just go down a hill, and then it should be on your right-hand side. And, you know, I was fine with those directions, and I had her mom's address, and we went by her mom's house, and it kind of looked kind of shady, and I didn't really think that would be her mom's house, and I was kind of too scared to go knock on the door, so I was more than happy with somewhat directions to the apartments. So we left and made up plans later that night to meet up, because she had to leave. She had like a family thing with her sisters or something. So we followed the directions, which led us to some apartments. And there must have been like 5 or 6 apartment buildings on this property, maybe more. And I'm like, dude, how am I supposed to know if this is right? So I'm about to call Amanda number 2 when I see Cassie and Tom, Amanda's younger sister and brother. And I'm like, oh shit, that's Cassie and Tom. And I hang up the phone, Chris turns around and pulls alongside the curb. And I won't forget this because it was such a creeper move. I yelled out, "Hey Cassie, come over here." Some white Ford Taurus pulls up on the side of the curb, and some stranger is yelling for you to come here. Definitely a pedophile moment for me. She slowly comes towards the car, and I'm like, "Hey, is your sister around?" And she takes a quick glance at like the parking lot and says, I don't see your van, so I don't think so. That's when I was like, "Hey, I'm Chris." And she's like, "Chris who?" And for some reason, I'm like, the Chris. Like, she's supposed to know. That's so stupid. And she still had that, like, I have no idea look on her face. So I'm like, "From Minnesota?" And she's like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm here to see your sister, but she's like avoiding me or some shit. So if you could tell her that I stopped by and I'll be here for a while." And she's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And I was like, "Thanks." And we drove off. And we went to this outlet mall or whatever that was like a block or two down, and we parked in front of the parking lot and we waited. And of course, just a couple minutes later, she's messaging me, "You're in Center Reach, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I came to see you." And she's like, "Well, I'll be there in like 30 minutes. So we park in front of Kohl's and we head in there to kill some time. And I wanted to go to the bathroom to check my hair, make sure I was looking good. You gotta look good. So once we were going through the store and I'm done giving myself a look over, we head back to the car, and she texts me and asks where we are at, and I tell her we're parked in front of Kohl's parking lot. She says, "Okay, I'll be there in a little bit." So I grab my Old Spice out of my bag, give myself a quick spray, because if you're hanging out with the ladies or just meeting up with a girl you like, you have to smell good. It's true. It's guy code. So we sit in the car for a little bit, and she texts me that she's here and where I'm at, and I'm like, "We're still parked here," and I ask her what she's driving, and she tells me a Ford Windstar, and my buddy's like, "Dude, a Windstar just parked behind us." And he's like, "Ask her if she has a soccer ball in the back." So I'm like, I text her back, I'm like, "Do you have a soccer ball in the back?" And she's like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" I'm like, "Because you parked behind us." So she does some primping in her rearview mirror, and she walks over to the passenger side, and I had my window rolled down, so she leans down on the door, and she's like, "Hello," and I'm like, "Hey." And I open the door to get out, and I like introduce her to Chris and Chris to her, and she's like, "Can I have a hug?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I give her one of those big bear hugs, pick her off the ground, do a 360, and she's like, "Oh my god, put me down." So I put her back down, and she's like, "You smell good." And my buddy Chris is like, "Yeah, it's the Old Spice." I'm telling you guys, you can't go wrong with Old Spice. You just can't. And then she asked me what I was doing here, and I said, "I came here to tell you that I'm in love with you, and that I think we should go on a date," which wasn't entirely true, but I just said that for shits and giggles. And now I would like to point out that even though she was kind of like at one point, she kind of grew out of it, and she was looking pretty good. She was in her prime. That's for sure. And she smiles and laughs, whatever. "You should have came 2 weeks earlier. I have a boyfriend now," which was funny because that's when I originally wanted to leave, but I think we were like doing work in the fields. I think we were like making hay or something, so I wasn't able to. So we talk, and I ask her, if she got my birthday present, because she never said anything to me, and I took a couple jabs at her for not remembering my birthday, and for not talking to me. And then after that, we end up going back to her apartment, and we talk some more. So I notice my phone's dying, and I go out to the car to get my charger, and while I'm walking back towards the apartment, she comes out ready to take a smoke, and I'm like, "Hey, don't you remember the rule?" And she's like, "What?" And I said, "Remember, I said if I ever came to see you, you couldn't smoke?" And she's like, "Christopher." And I'm like, "If you smoke that, I'm gonna leave." So she like pauses there for a second, and then she puts the smoke away, which totally was a victory for me. Yeah, that's fucking right. So we go back into the apartment, and I decided to start this game to see who knew more about the other person, and I assumed it was me. And I was winning for a while, and then we get tied up, and then it came down to like siblings and like knowing their names, middle names, and all that stuff. And I just could not remember Tom's middle name, and she had it easy. I don't know why she had it easy, but my brother's middle name, I knew she knew it, because it was an easy thing, and Tyler was always talking if we were ever on the phone, so obviously it was easy for her. I didn't know Tom's middle name. I just couldn't think of it, but I ended up losing that one, but I was fine with that. It was like, whatever. So we watched some TV, And all of a sudden, she has my hand and she's like playing with it. I don't know, like running her fingers like down the palm of my hand. I really don't remember that well. And I would have said, you know, what the fuck are you doing? But then she probably would have stopped. But then a minute or two after that, she still has my hand, and her oldest younger brother came through the door right away, Roland, and she lets go of my hand. Her hands are like to herself, and I'm like, what a cock blocker. Oh my god, but he was pretty cool. He ended up helping us out a little later, and so we talk about little stuff again, and I told her how we wanted to go into the city, and she should come with us. And she tells me that she doesn't have money, blah, blah, blah. And I told her I'd pay for a ticket and whatnot. So it was like set, I guess. So we go our separate ways around like 7:30, I think it was. And she had to go back to her boyfriend. So she tells my buddy Chris that it was really nice to meet him. And he walks back to the car. And she tells me that it was really nice seeing me. And I tell her I see her tomorrow. And she gives me a hug and kisses me on the cheek. And I get in the car, and my buddy Chris is like, dude, she kissed you. I think she likes you. And I'm like, dude, she kissed me on the cheeks. I don't know. I think she was just happy to see me. And we drive off looking for a motel to spend the night. So we find an Econo Lodge, and we go in asking for a room. And like this hodgepodge guy points to a sign which talked about if you were under 25, you needed a parent present to rent a room or something. And I was just like, what the fuck is this shit? So we left and continued our search, and we end up back at Amanda number 2's house, and we're looking up online at some places for like decent priced rooms, and like all these places you had to be like 21 plus. So I really was pissed off kind of. I was like, dude, what the fuck is this shit? So we ended up leaving Amanda number 2's house a little bit after that because she was heading out to Applebee's to meet up with her friends, and I didn't want to tag along because we didn't have a place to spend the night yet, so I didn't want to fucking spend the night at Applebee's when we should be looking for a fucking place to stay. So, Chris is driving around, and I'm looking through my GPS, looking at hotels, and I see Bayshore Inn. I give them a call, and I can get a room. It's only $40. I was like, sweet. So I set the GPS, and about like 20 minutes later, we make it there, and it looks kind of ghetto. Cannot lie. And there was a few security cameras, though. You kind of hoped that they worked, but we decided to stay there anyways. And I remember that night, Chris was complaining that he was hungry, so I gave him like $6, and I was like, go to the vending machine, and then I went to bed. Such a fucking terrible friend. Oh my god. So the next morning, I'm up at like 5:45, and I can't get back to sleep, so I just get up, take a shower, make myself look good, and waited for Chris to wake up. And I think he woke up at like a little after 8. Because, you know, I wasn't going to be a dick, because, you know, if he was doing all the driving and stuff, I was like, I'm going to let you sleep, do whatever. And after he's done getting ready, we head back to Amanda's apartment, and there she is sitting on the steps, smoking a cig, and she gives me a hug, and I'm like, you know smoking's bad, right? And she's like, yeah, and then she walks us up to her apartment, and we get in there, and she drops the bad news that she can't come into the city with us because she has to pick up her boyfriend from work. Once again, I was like, what the fuck? Well, I didn't want to go into the city without her since I pretty much came to see her, so I asked her, well, what's there to do around here? And she, like, I don't know, rambles off some shit, and she talks about, well, we could go to the mall. And I was like, alright, cool, let's go to the mall. I think it was the Smith Haven Mall? I don't know, it's been a while. I think it was the Smith Haven Mall. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what it was. So we go in there, and we go to like an Apple store, and I've never been into an Apple store, so that was pretty cool. And she picks up like an iPhone, and she starts like recording and taking pictures, and all of a sudden she starts laughing, and she shows my buddy Chris, and he starts laughing, and I'm like, dude, what's so funny? And then they show me a picture, and they were laughing because I looked like a kid that had like, you know, MS or something. You know, I had like the grayness around my eye, and I was pale, and I'm like, dude, that's not funny. And they just thought that was funny for some reason. And we continued to go through the mall, and we went to, well, we were going to go to the Cheesecake Factory, but it was too early in the morning. They weren't open yet because I had never had cheesecake. I still haven't had cheesecake yet. True story, guys. I haven't had cheesecake. And we went to like Build-A-Bear, and we came back in, and she goes into like Victoria's Secret, I think it was. And I just like, me and Chris just like stand outside. I'm like, dude, two bros, we're just gonna sit out here. Fuck this shit. So she walks in there, and she sees that I'm not following her, and she's like, come on. And I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, come on. And I'm like, no. And then she's like, Christopher. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So then I walk in there, and, you know, I'm just like going up against the wall, you know, where like the perfume is and stuff. And I'm like, all right, this isn't so bad. This isn't so bad. And then all of a sudden she comes up and just like hits me on like the side of like the neck and cheek with like some glittery perfume shit. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And I pretty much walked around the rest of the day with like glitter on me and stuff. So yeah, it was pretty fucking awesome. And we leave the mall, and I remember when we left, once we left, she was in the van. She was like looking for her cigarettes, and she finally found her cigarettes. And then I stole her lighter. So she was like trying to find something to like light her cigarettes with, and she had like nothing. And then I was like, "Ha, hold that shit." And then she found the lighter for her van, and then she lights up a cigarette. And I pretended to be mad. I'm like, "What the fuck? You knew the rules." So then the whole car ride back to her apartment, she's like poking me in my side, and she's like, Christopher. And I'm like, dude, stop fucking poking me. So she's like, well, what do you guys want to do now? And she rambles off some stuff, and she's like, well, you guys want to play mini golf? And I was like, dude, sure, let's go play some mini golf. So we go play mini golf. And I've never played, once again, I've never played mini golf, but I've just been a natural at most sports. So I mean, mini golf, it's kind of sports, right? So I obviously win because I'm just fucking that awesome. I think Chris came in second, and then Amanda came in last because she was pretty bad. It's true. And we went and grabbed something to eat at like Burger King, and then we go back to her house. And at the time, we were kind of a little low on money, and we weren't sure what was going to happen, if I was going to stay another day or not. So when we get back to her apartment, I told her, I was like, well, I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow and blah, 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 or what's going to happen. And she's like, well, just text me. And she's like, well, do you have everything? And I'm like, oh, no, dude, I think I left my iPod in your house or in your apartment because I think it was like in my back pocket or something. So I just like took it out and put it on her end table or whatever. And I left it there. So I was like, oh, no, I forgot it. And while we're walking up the steps to her apartment, for some reason, I just start crying. And this is probably one of the saddest moments in my life. I don't know why I was crying, but I was crying. And she grabs my iPod and turns around and gives it to me. And she sees me crying, and she's like, Christopher, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. It was really fucking sad. And yeah, what was even more terrible was the fact that, you know, I had the car ride with my friend Chris to wherever we were gonna go, and yeah, I was kind of just like sniffling and shit while I was in the car. It was really pretty sad. And you know what, guys, I'm not gonna be able to finish this again, son of a bitch. So you know what, we're gonna pick this off next time, which will be in a day or so, and I'll see you guys later.